Welcome to the University of Illinois Extension Specialty Food Producer Seminar Series. Today we start the series with our first seminar entitled Starting Right in Specialty Foods. I am Terry Miller, Publicity and Promotion Specialist with the University of Illinois Extension, Unit 18. I am joining you from the Christian County Extension Office in Taylorville. I am also joined by Katie Pollock, Extension Extra Help, who is assisting with our local foods initiative. So if you want to say hi to everybody.
Hello.
Thanks, Katie. Lisa, could you just take a brief moment to introduce yourself?
Sure, no problem. My name is Lisa Peterson. I'm the Nutrition and Wellness Educator for Unit 18, and I'm also working with this local food initiative, and you'll actually be hearing from me next month as I do a class on cottage food laws. Yeah.
Thanks, Lisa, and thank you, Montgomery County, for tuning in. I just want to take a moment to introduce today's presenter. Steve Groner is a Community of Economic Development Educator for University of Illinois Extension. Groner has focused on business startups and entrepreneurs for the past 8 years and credits much of his problem-solving skills to a lengthy background in product development and marketing, conducting workshops at the community college level and now University of Illinois Extension. It is a natural evolution from the lessons he's learned helping numerous individuals and firms. His approach applies both discipline and creativity to overcoming challenges. In addition to a degree in product design, Groner earned an MBA from Benedictine University and has completed certifications in business and entrepreneurship studies. He completed duties as president of an Illinois entrepreneurship organization and director of a business incubator program early in 2016, prior to joining the University of Illinois Extension Network of Educators. We are very pleased to have Stephen with us today. And Steve, you may take over the presentation when you're ready.
Thank you, Terry. And I will try and coordinate my voice and my hand here and get that underway. Okay. Due to the amount of material that I would like to cover, I plan to pretty well consume the time allotted. Questions, though, will be welcome by email, and I'll respond as quickly as possible. My email, for those that are just listening on the phone, would be Stephen, and that's spelled with a V, S-T-E-V-E-N, and then R-G, Richard George, Stephen R-G, at illinois.edu. For anyone also that would like me to send them directly a copy of the slides after 3 o'clock, I'll be glad to do that again by just sending a request in to me by email. You'll see slight variations in slide format because I custom select important topics for each presentation, and over time you'll see why I've selected the materials. And so again, stay in touch and we can chat. Starting a business, launching an idea is a very complicated effort. The end of the presentation includes marketing topics, and they can take up a lot of time. So I'll cover what I can, and then I'll trust that other speakers in this series will also present their thoughts. But again, stay in touch afterwards because marketing is one of my passions. The reason I do advising and encourage written business plans is that everyone with an idea deserves a better chance at success than what is gained from simply wishing and hoping things work out. Let's see. Hopefully I only bumped my view of the screen and not anyone else's. So I hope you're still seeing the full screen. There's no single path to starting a business. However, I do agree with Dr. Sarasvathi's research pinpointing 5 common traits of great creators like Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos. And you can see the first one is very self-intuitive. Start with what you know. For instance, Bill Gates starting software design and hardware experimentations in his garage would be far more productive than me. That would not be a strong suit for me. And then decide what you can risk and lose, because in business startups, there is risk and loss, and to go into it with any other perspective is simply naive. Co-creators. The main point I'd like to make here is that they're not the same thing as co-owners. there are ways to reward people for ideas without making them your operations manager. And then everyone knows the statement about if you get lemons, make lemonade. That is certainly true in the topic that we're talking about. And the path is going to be uncertain. So now I'd like to just give you some pointers for determining when you are actually ready to go into your idea more seriously. Okay, the very simplistic red, yellow, green graphic. Red is just having an idea. I want to do this. The portion I'm trying to address and help with is the yellow area. You know how to do this. I want to bring in a little bit of additional education and basics so that then you can actually start moving into the green area, which is the positive statement and the confidence of saying, I can do this. And then there is the reality. Risk, time, and personal impact have to be considered very seriously and with a lot of thought before getting caught up in details, like the name of a restaurant, a recipe that you like, etc. If you can't solve and deal with the major issues that I'm suggesting, don't waste your time on the others. Keep it as a hobby, or keep it as an experiment or a market test, or just do it part-time. All of those choices are very honorable and they're legitimate. And sometimes maybe just the timing isn't right to launch a full-time venture. Your interest in, as an example, grilling meats and creating dry meat rubs stops way short of the necessary topics that I have on the screen right now. Most obvious is the cost of a business startup in time and money. But what about the other things, like where does your medical coverage come from? How will you make decisions? How are you going to get along with partners? What's the timing in regard to your other family situations and issues that you're dealing with as a larger unit? And relationships change. There is no way that you can be worrying about having enough money to pay the business rent or not having enough sales or something else and not bring that home with you. And so your friends and family are going to go through this along with you. Also, look at missed opportunities like retirement plans, other issues. And then there is the dose of reality for all of us is, will your health permit you to do what you're wanting to embark upon? And of course, in the bottom portion of my slide, I talk about the real nasty things like credit rating, bank balance, and other obligations. If you have a poor credit rating, fix that first. It is not going to work to ignore it. And the same with the bank balance. If you just entered into a hefty home mortgage, it's probably not a really good time to get leveraged in another direction as well. Something may not be a bad idea. It might just be the wrong time to go full tilt into it, is generally what I'm saying here. And just for your information, the website addresses will occur later in the presentation, but the state of Illinois puts out a very good workbook on starting your business in Illinois. I would certainly endorse it. It's free, it's high quality, and the only caveats I would put on it is one appendix has a reality checklist, and I really recommend it. It's a very good one. But the second appendix is an example of the financial statements that would go into a business plan. And I really personally feel from my experience that they're a little too complex. And so I don't really recommend those. But the quality of the book and the The zero cost is something that it should go into any startup library. And then these are actual statements that I have heard through advising people. But don't start a business just because others think you should, or because you're unhappy with your current job, or particularly another one that comes up frequently, that a space is available that you like and you're afraid that someone else is going to rent it. It's your risk and your commitment. And what these friend and family conversations I'm suggesting is they're the start of an idea that you can work on. It's not a jumping off the cliff point. And you have to truly know your strengths and weaknesses. No one is perfect at everything. And any of us that assume that are probably pretty dangerous. Know yourself and which one of these interactions are going to be the most difficult or uncomfortable for you. Working with lenders, working with your customers, negotiating with suppliers, managing employees, networking with peers, getting cooperation from officials. Each interaction requires a different skill set. Personal goals lead to business goals, and you have to get this sequence right and sort this out before proceeding, or your venture is going to lead to more stress, more unhappiness, and a mismatch actually is going to reduce your chance of success. It's going to make your chances quite slim. Good research and data is so important, and that is the one thing that you can, well, unless you have a fairly large budget, it's going to be really hard to get other people to contribute. You know, the person with the passion and the vision really needs to work on the gathering the data and the information. And then in many workshops, I've used the statement, and I still believe it. If you're familiar with term papers, this is one. So how do you get your grade? It's better to make mistakes on paper and reduce your risk, your true risks later. Work things out before signing any lease or contract. That is a strong opinion and suggestion I would make. Lenders and other helpers understand your idea, and if you don't get their confidence built up, you're probably just wasting your time. So put your plan together before you talk to others. Your chance of getting underway successfully improves dramatically with this plan. At launch of anything, a product or a business, there are hundreds of things that need done. And so you really need some of the stuff in writing when things start getting pretty crazy. And you have to have a touchstone of reality. You're going to need it going forward. Don't put the plan in your drawer. Keep it out and use it. And if you put quality thought into it and good info into your plan, then go back to it. Check and see when you're getting off track. And another suggestion I make is to formally review it at least 2 times a year. Use tools that work for you. Simple is best. Work in a method you're comfortable with and one that you can present with confidence. This exhibit it's called a blank canvas, which I like. It allows people to be very adaptable to each person's own thought process. And another thing from experience, I would say save the money on a new laptop and software if you aren't comfortable using them. If you are, that's great. But if you're not, put the money into something else that you're going to need for your startup. And then Timely, accurate files and record keeping are absolutely essential from beginning to end of your business. It's a discipline that has to be there with our complicated world. Quality bits of research and information will do you absolutely no good if you can't find them later. And if the IRS wants that bits of information and you can't find them, you have more problems on your hands. So some of the helpful resources. A really good starting point is always SBA.gov. It stands for Small Business Administration. They have tons of materials out there for small business owners and startups. IRS.gov is very important. You have to know what's expected of you. And Illinois.gov is kind of in the middle somewhere. They have some of both perspectives. Also, another thing that you'll find on the Illinois website is they have a toll-free helpline. And you can still talk to knowledgeable, live people that are going to try their best to get you the next question answered and connected with the next helpful person. The lifeglobal.org is a very nice program put together by the Hewlett-Packard group. It's done as a social and civic service, and you can learn an awful lot on there with free courses. The GoDaddy, of course, is a major website tool. Websites are a must. They're today's business card. They must be formatted for smartphones. You have to be active and populate your website. And then GoDaddy or other sites, I like the major providers because you have to assume that the support and services are always going to be top-notch and are going to be there for you. But other things like picking your domain name, getting it registered, ownership of your domain address. This is probably a good point for me to interject that I do get a little blunt on some topics, and I'll try to point out when something's strictly my opinion. I have lots of opinions about web presence. One example that I would give is the Wine Growers of America, Grape Growers of America, or Illinois. Of course, one of their working names was Illinois Wine. Well, in the internet world, the world of domain addresses, Illinois Wine and Illinois Swine are really pretty similar. There was better choices that could have been made, and eventually changes were made because the grape growers did not want to promote Illinois pork. The last one on the slide is 1 Million Cups, and also Kauffman Foundation has several powerful websites, not just 1 Million Cups, but it's an online inspiring educational support platform. Just amazing amount of things on it. And I believe my next slide will promote that a little bit more. And I'm sorry, it's just a screenshot, but this 1 Million Cups, they have plenty of videos and tutorials about how to help you. I think this one actually was talking about, 7 easy steps or seven things you want to consider. This one is, I've marked this one as mentoring. You can actually listen to people that are going through or thinking about similar things to yourself. And it's online, it's free, and it's current information. So the Kauffman Foundation is a wonderful and comprehensive resource. Now getting into the special series that the extension has put together and touching a little bit on that. Here's a few of the helpful food-related resources that I personally have found. And the top one is FDA, Food and Drug Administration.gov. And it's because the feds set the standards for everyone else. When it comes to health and safety, the federal government is the big dog. The GS1US, which is an odd little address, but that's one of the starting places to get barcodes in case you plan to sell foods with retail packaging. There's a similar address for QR codes, which I believe stands for quick read, and they're the ones that your phone could scan. Some people have experimented with that, and I have some thoughts about that also when you get into using marketing tools. Another one I like is a la carte consulting group, and it's a very very knowledgeable, very passionate consultant that believes in sharing. And so read the free articles that are on that website. There's also tools like checklists for managing both the front end and the back end of a business, like a restaurant. The value and time saved and the quality of the examples is very good. And then the extension program in Pennsylvania, they actually have focused on and do a fair amount of materials for food entrepreneurs. And so that, again, would be a high quality website to go to. And this is a place where I'm going much from my experience, probably more than anything, but lenders take a very hard line on food-related businesses. And again, my blunt statement is accept it and deal with it. No one individual or organization is going to change that. My second point is use this rocket science formula that's called third, third, third. And my example would be is take a $10 meal in a restaurant. Just for projection's sake and for planning, see if you can bring in the cost of preparing the food, the materials, bring them in at $3.33. The labor of serving, cleaning up after, and preparing the meal, the total amount of the labor cost needs to come in at $3.33. And then you have $3.33 to pay for all else. Utilities, rent, profit, and don't forget, profit is stuck in there too. Taxes. Use this formula to proceed with getting your whole business picture roughed out. Then go back with a better detail if you choose to, but make changes carefully, because this formula has widespread acceptability. I didn't invent this. Then there's the impacts of alcohol and gaming. If we're talking about consumer establishments, bricks and mortar establishments, businesses have added these to provide some cushion to the formula above. And there's people that have, gather your own data, look at your competitors, similar businesses, etc. But there are other people that have viewpoints then on what does the impact of alcohol have on your profit margin, on covering some of your other expenses. What is the gaming industry starting to do to businesses that have incorporated that? But don't start there. Start with the third formula and see how far you get. You've got to make that work first before you get caught up in too many details. And you need to get to where you can start making some go or no-go decisions, and getting sidetracked in any one category of detail is probably going to not get you to that decision point as quickly or as effectively. I'm well into the presentation, and now I'm getting into some more detail, as I hope you can sense. Business plan basics. Only share information as it's needed. And why is this? Because people can take your recipe. Someone else can take your business name. They can take your concept. It's a competitive world out there. But I will also say very strongly that you do have to form a trusted team. I cannot, except for a few of the world success stories that we probably read about, I cannot think of any cases where having one person totally micro-control and design and develop an entire business concept has worked out. We all need to have feedback, pushback, conversation. We have to get information that we're not, well up to speed on. Particularly bookkeepers, lawyers, and an inner circle. Just as a short note, I personally know that I should not be the person naming a business. I need input on that, because the names that I come up with are not the best ones. Even though I like them, in the eyes of the customers or the target market, they're not the best. I've learned through experience. So how do you solve this predicament of needing to get other people's buy-in, but needing to keep some things guarded? Well, the early stage cautions are non-disclosure agreements, non-compete agreements, and confidentiality agreements. These are all easily available online with any search that you do. And get them, use documents that you personally feel comfortable with, and make them a habit. Have people sign them. Keep them. It does give you a point of defense. And that's, probably asking for quite a bit in our competitive world again, but it does give you a starting point. It's a discipline. Just do it. You're risking your ideas, so it's worth it. Then, talking about patents, trademarks, and copyrights, those pertain to intellectual and creative property. Patents and registered trademarks are expensive and take time, and not every idea or name needs them. Get advice from several advisors, however, before investing in them. There are also state business name registries and other less protective options that will work fine for many ideas. Not everything, I guess the bottom line is not everything is patentable, and we shouldn't always worry about a registered trademark. It takes some research, some thinking, and some advice. Some more of my straight commentary. Until you add financial projections, you don't have a business plan. A narrative all by itself will not be considered a business plan by anyone except yourself. Aim for quality, not quantity. Understand what you put in your business plan, and then if you write it, use it. Okay, forecast versus goals. It's an important distinction because goals are what you hope will happen. A forecast is what you're committing will happen. In my view, I also use the word projection the same as forecast, but I'm not your lender. So make certain that any reader understands what you're trying to state, and just be careful with your terminology. The three basic financial statements that I said are mandatory. One is a balance sheet. That basically discloses your assets and your liabilities. And it, for a lot of reasons, it's better to be honest up front. You have to disclose things. There's reasons why anyone that's going to look at your business plan wants to know what you're working with and what's in the closet that they're going to have to be leery of. A cash flow sheet summarizes on whatever increment works best for you on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis what money you plan to have coming in and what you're going to be paying out. On a business that has perhaps 100 customers a month, a cash flow statement on a monthly basis probably is okay. If you're doing a fast food business where you have 500 or 1,000 people a day, I would say you'd want a daily statement. A profit and loss statement is the third one, and basically that's your summary, and it normally, traditionally is monthly, on did you make a profit or did you lose money? And until you can put together, either for a new business or a new product, a projection, or for a business that is operational, until you can demonstrate to someone that you've looked at the last 12 months, don't even talk to other people. You haven't even covered the basics yet. If you talk to a lender, actually, by the way, you'll have to have at least 3 years of this. Sometimes it's 5 years. My hint is that there's a lot of other worksheets also that go into preparing these three major ones. One of the main ones, of course, is startup costs. Your expenses. How are you going to do your pricing? How are you calculating your pricing? But again, do your best to just gather and organize the data, then seek help from bookkeepers or Excel spreadsheet people that can help you with the formatting. Often, too, keep in mind, if you do pursue lending, a banker is going to ask you to put it in their format anyway. And so, again, have the information. There are other ways and other people that can help you put it into a good format. Don't get caught up on the format. And just another reminder is don't use terms that you personally don't understand. It doesn't impress anyone. It only confuses things. And my example is the terms gross profit, net profit, and markup. They all have specific meanings. And you can be really misstating what you're trying to point out by, rushing to judgment and using a word and to a CPA. They totally they shut off listening. They're looking at your mistake. That's what they're looking at. Basic forms of ownership. With a sole proprietorship, it's the easiest to start up. Essentially, you decide you're going to be in business tomorrow, and you take steps to do that. A partnership is similar. It's just there's more people, more ideas involved. Partnership certainly can be more than two people. The more advanced structures are a limited liability company and then various forms of corporations. A subchapter S is the simplest of those. But for this presentation, I really want to just touch on the fact that the main difference between a sole proprietor and a formal structure is with the sole proprietor, all liability stays with that person. When you start going into more formal structures, some of the business liability moves away from the owner and goes on to this new thing that's been created, which is a legal structure, an LLC or a corporation. Now, let lawyers and tax advisors explain the differences. In a lot of cases, once you've decided about the liability, actually between an LLC and an S corporation, much of the impact is actually on taxation. And so, get the advice from a tax advisor. The main thing is whether the owner is going to keep all the risk or exposure or this new thing, this new entity is going to take on some of the risk. Now, why does that matter? It matters if you have a large estate, a family property that is worth a lot of money, or simply a family member that says, you can start this new venture, but don't you risk my house. That's probably the worst one, actually. And so that's why people need to determine whether they need a legal structure or not. Now, just a very basic observation, again, from myself, is as soon as you're dealing with food-related businesses, the press and the media have escalated the bad publicity that can happen if there's tainted food, tainted preparation, etc. To be safe, I think the fallback would be to recommend that you want something that has got more of a legal structure to it. But sole proprietor is a pretty easy thing to do to start experimenting with, and it's tempting, and it's certainly lower cost. So I think getting legal advice and looking at your own specific situation is very important. And again, it's about what you and your loved ones are willing to risk or expose. And as a general reminder, insurance is still your first line of defense in anything. And there are all different kinds of insurance to think about. Registering your business, there's various steps you need to complete. You'll have local, state, and federal processes that need to be followed. My basic advice is start local and then move up the ladder. The first example is an assumed name. I saw one this morning across the street from me. It was called Robin's Salon, a hairstyling place. Okay, Robin is obviously the owner's name, but her name is not Robin Salon. And so that's an assumed name. In the eyes of the law, that is, that's not Robin Smith. That's Robin Salon. So an example of that would be there is nothing but good that can come out of going into the city or county clerk's office and saying, I want to open this salon, and this is what's going to be called. What do you need to know from me? And it's that simple. They'll explain to you what you need to do. But assumed name is something local government is, very interested in, and there's no downside to talking to city and county clerks early on. Another example would be business permits, the health department for this topic that the series is focusing on, and zoning. Health department is pretty clear-cut. Business permit is pretty clear-cut. They would tell you what it costs and to fill out, the application or the form. Zoning is a little trickier, and clearly, if you're doing renovation or new construction, that it makes perfect sense. But the ones I've seen actually that cause the most problems with zoning, and the reason you want to talk to folks in that area is signage is a huge issue, and you don't want to guess wrong on that. Traffic, if you create traffic congestion or noise, they're going to be on your business in a heartbeat, and it's going to be in a negative way instead of having done it proactively up front in terms of solving the issues. Another one is clutter. So it's pretty, once you've got the zoning part and it's zoned appropriately for what you're trying to do. I'm talking also about home-based business here. Signs in your yard, traffic, clutter, and noise in your driveway. It all applies. If you stir up your neighbors, you're going to have trouble. So it's better to deal with the local first. And then they'll also tell you generally how to start moving up the ladder to the state and federal issues. Another bit of advice is gather the forms and the data first, but don't enroll until you're near your launch. And you might wonder why. Well, in the government doesn't move really quick. Once you're registered, it takes a long time to get unregistered. And if you decide to do something different, you do a pivot, you go to a different location, change something else, it takes a long time to get all that unsnarled. So it's better, again, to stay organized, know what you have to do at the 11th hour when everything is ready to go. Today's computer systems actually will allow you to enroll, register, sign up fairly quickly. And the fourth point on registering is all government groups want to know about your employees. Not only is this for workers' comp, but another enticing part of this is revolving loans. Local loan funds can be available to a new business, and it can be very helpful. And just also, I would point out that they are not going to finance a whole initiative. They want to just be one small player that are all, then they're going to want to see other people taking risk, including the owners and the lenders, the local lenders. But you can't overlook revolving loans. And what's one of the criteria that they're driven on? How many jobs you're going to create. Another just bit of advice on that is another reason you need a business plan is because the application for a revolving loan, of course, is cumbersome. In some of the small communities I work in, the document is 10 or 12 pages. And it's packed with difficult to answer questions that, pretty well are going to have to come from your business plan. Also, don't confuse like being licensed and bonded. We've heard of that with tradespeople. Those are simple things to do. A license means you have a permit to operate your business from the city, and bonded means you have insurance. That's it. So watch the language, the wording, and don't be confused about having a business permit. That is not the same as getting solicited by your local Chamber of Commerce for an annual membership. It's not joining the Better Business Bureau. Those are all separate things. I'm mostly talking about how you stay clear with the government entities. So moving on to the state. Collecting sales tax is actually a legal responsibility. It's not a if you feel like it kind of thing. Also, the type of legal business structure you select is going to determine what kind of registration and reporting is required. And of course, Illinois tax.gov is one of the sites for the Illinois Department of Revenue. But the other one that starts coming into play is the Secretary of State. For example, they're the ones that actually keep track of the various aliases of businesses. So that, for instance, if you have a business name that you really like and feel strongly about, first place to go look and see if it's used in the state of Illinois is at the Secretary of State's website. Licenses and permits are also required to operate certain kinds of businesses. I mentioned some, a hairstylist cosmetology license is required by them, barbers, taxidermy, there's a number of them. And there's probably, besides the food handling permits and sanitation permits, there's certainly plenty of them that are specific to the food industry and food products too. And then moving on to the federal government. The main thing that the feds want, of course, too, is they want their tax money. But one of the things that our country works on is they want an identification number of some sort to figure out what you're doing. And so you either have to use your Social Security number, or you get these things that are used, unfortunately, they have different terminology, but it's a federal employer ID number or employer ID number, and they're abbreviated often to FEIN or EIN. Also, though, applications will say, what's your tax ID? That's what they're talking about, is what are you going to file your taxes under? And when I pointed out a short time ago that, do a lot of this research, know what you're going to have to do at the 11th hour, but don't do it all until you're ready and have really decided you're going to proceed. This is one place, especially with selling to other consumers, where you might have to get your federal ID number. And the reason is if you really want to get wholesale prices quoted to you, for instance, to help you with your business plan projections, most suppliers are not going to give you the real bottom number until they see that you have a federal ID number. Often that's one of the requirements even for going online and getting a quotation. So, if you have to do it for that reason, then so be it, you do. Otherwise, just try and make some basic guesstimates as to what additional discounting would be involved later on once you actually did apply for either an ID number, or there's another cool, complicated little thing called a sales tax exemption. And that would take way longer than this session this afternoon to cover. But again, bookkeepers, CPAs, those kind of folks, they're the right ones to probably give some advice on this sort of thing also. So kind of in a general summary of some key points about what being a business owner or a manufacturer is really going to entail. Cash flow. If you don't have money in your checking account, what to pay a bill, to purchase something else, what are you going to do? You don't want to put it on your personal charge card, particularly if it's going to cost you 18% interest. So managing your cash flow is really where small businesses have huge challenges. And then working capital kind of flows into this too. All right, we all know that a business launch is going to have a lot of money going out, maybe not enough coming in yet, but you cannot perpetually or perennially run a business on consecutive losses. You're taking away your retirement or your bank account, your savings account. You can't just keep explaining away business losses. On the side note, I would say that you still don't always say that the idea is bad, but it definitely needs addressed and things need fixed. Kind of why budgets are important too. They're put together for a reason, and if you put them together, use them. Track your actual versus forecast. When you're falling short, choices and decisions need to be made. And then, I touched on it briefly, but reporting and paying taxes without fail is absolutely crucial. That is not your money. If you collect taxes, that is the state's money, and they look at it as theft if you're not paying it. And that causes major alarms to go off. So, that is not your money, and that's the way to look at it. And then through some years of experience and also working in a lot of small towns, local donations they can be just killers. Organizations have no idea what you're struggling with and what bills you're trying to pay. They just know that they're supposed to go get their free cups or something else. A couple of the bits of advice I would give there is have a donation budget. Generally, I suggest per month. And when you've given that out, whatever next little group or cute little person comes in, you need to say no, not this month. You can come back next month. Also, there's been quite a number of business owners that have said that they've actually tracked whether or not sales have increased with a given charitable organization or their members after they've done a donation. And I have rarely seen a case where their business from that sector has actually increased. So when it's really hard to say no, sometimes, that's a good thing to think about. And if you do give out donations, make sure that you get publicity for it. Most papers will run pictures and a short description of what was being done. Similar, but talking about just management practices. Family and friends and investors are very important, but through all of the early startup particularly, you have to really think about how the decisions in your venture are going to be made. For instance, giving you some money to start your business really doesn't necessarily say that that person should have ongoing say in how it's run. I do believe that the issues are difficult and they're thorny and they're hard to talk about, but they're better talked about up front. Sometimes they should be in writing. And if things were not meant to be, then it's probably better to not take an investor's money if you just have a bad feeling that it's coming with a lot of strings attached. Similar situation with particularly restaurants and catering and businesses that have a number of workers. Especially if it's an area that you've come out of yourself, you mentally have to leave that behind you. You're the owner, not a friend. And that has caused a lot of problems, of course, in small businesses. And it adds a lot of stress to an owner's already stressful day. Things that owners do have to remain focused on, I mentioned cash flow before. By cash, I mean watch theft and thievery. Worker theft is listed on every small business owner's list as one of the top problems in terms of shrinkage and lost profits. Be very careful about who can sign checks, who takes money in and out of a cash drawer. Check that stuff. That's where read the account balances. The owner has to watch that stuff. No one else can. Working capital, similar. I mentioned you can't run a business in the long term off of credit. Only the owner is going to be able to, micromanage that capital and make sure that, when an appliance needs replaced or whatever, there's actually some money to do that. Watching the budgets and monitoring them, that's an owner's responsibility. A key one, and it takes some time, understanding your financial reports. There's a lot of owners that they have bookkeepers, which I endorse. I think they take a lot of pressure off of an owner. But if they're generating financial reports, the owner has to understand them and take the time to read them, be conversant with what's shown there, what's changing. And one example of why you want to do that is, the next one, lender relations. If you give your financials as required with any loan, to your financial institution, they understand those financials, and you sure as heck want to know more than the person that's looking at them. And you need to be able to answer their questions. You can't just look at that information and as an owner think that you're just third party handing it on. It could be presenting something horrible that you really would want to know about. You don't want to find out about it from your banker. Lender relations also covers the idea that most or many people only go to their banks in person when they have a problem. That's really not very good. You know, you want to do selling here too. You want to have a good relation with your lenders. Talk to them when things are going well. Make sure that they have tried some of your products or have been into your restaurant or your food truck or whatever. You want them to be a fan of yours and pulling for you. You want them to be of the mindset that they want to see you succeed. Lenders generally do, because why? That's the only way they're going to collect their money. So they do want to see you succeed, but just going in when you have problems or putting it off till you really have severe problems, that's bad. So you need to really work on your bankers. Generally when you don't need them, and hopefully they'll be there for you when you do need them. And then your goals and objectives. Going way back to where I started, with goals and objectives, only the owner can determine whether you're on track or you're not. Are you accomplishing what you originally set out to do? What needs changed? What was a really good idea that's going to take you in a different direction, but it's one you're comfortable in going in? You know, those are owner decisions. And don't lose time on distractions and things that others can do for you. A good example here is the bickering and the carrying on that can actually occur in personnel matters. Some of that is ownership of responsibility, but some of it isn't. You know, I'm not a good delegator, so I'm speaking from experience. But, you know, for an owner, it's important that you don't lose time on things that other people could have solved for you. And then, again, I'll say, and I've pointed it out several times, get help where you need it. No one can be the master and understand everything in operating a business. And so know where your strengths are, know where your weaknesses are. You can buy help in all kinds of different ways. Just know where you need to do that. Okay, talking about employees, that takes you to a whole new level of complexity, and it should be avoided if you can. And I say this in terms of suggesting that that's why many businesses operate on part-time help, on temporary help, temporary labor, whatever, independent contractors. And I'm also pointing out to be really careful, even when you're talking to peers. Don't use the word employee lightly. If you're talking about you have employees, it implies specific obligations and commitments, and some of those are legal. You need to, for instance, if you're doing a catering event and you're hiring people to do serving for this coming weekend, those are not employees. And if they are, you're going the wrong direction. You know, so don't say they're employees. They can be your staff. They can be your, you know, help. The word employee in our world means specific things, so use it really carefully. And then, you know, I'm indicating some other things that you really need to think about when you do get into the complexity of employees. How many? That's a big issue, especially when you're doing your projections. I always try and point out to people, if you have employees behind the counter and you have no customers coming in, you might as well just have your wallet open and start peeling off dollars and giving them to them, because that's exactly what's happening. You need to know how to measure performance, how to set performance expectations. Training is good. how can a person represent your business if you haven't really trained them? That's a tough challenge for small businesses, but it's really necessary in order to present the kind of business that you want. The next two slides, I think, are probably my two main strong marketing points to make. And clearly, any business is focused on, and should be, on answering the question, do you provide the best customer experience? And again, this is a place where, from my experience, I'll say, this has to be from the customer's viewpoint. It cannot be from the owner's viewpoint. If you're taking it just from your viewpoint, I'm sorry, and I'm being a bit blunt again, but I think that's being delusional. An example would be, I like watching Gordon Ramsay programs on television. I think there was one called Hotel Hell, maybe. A lot of choices were made in those, and I know that they were set up, but there's a lot of choices made in those businesses about minimizing cost. They were reheating frozen food. They were saving food with saran wrap beyond dates that should have been. Weren't remodeling the rooms, etc. You can rationalize as an owner under the financial stress of the choices that those people were making, but did they provide the best customer experience? Absolutely not. And often now on Facebook or Twitter, you're going to see if you're not providing it. TripAdvisor, there's all kinds of sites out there people can talk about things on. So besides saying it has to be from someone's viewpoint and a group of people's viewpoints other than the owners, you have to work at getting that feedback and make it welcome and invited. Don't intimidate people. You need to embrace that feedback. Appreciate honest opinions, and then make the changes. Maybe you can't make all of them. Maybe you can't make your preferred change, but you've got to keep moving down that road. But if you get off track of not the focus of answering, do you provide the best customer experience of anyone that's in your orbit, of your competitors and other choices, it's a huge mistake. And my other main one is, this is probably the mantra: get found and look open. And again, this is, how does your business look to outsiders? And this can apply to web businesses and other platforms, mailings. It doesn't have to be a bricks and mortar thing. Just, do you look open? How easy is it to find you? I like signs, and I don't mean just the ones in the windows, but they're good too. Do you have signs that say you're open? And if you do, for heaven's sake, turn them off when you're closed. Turn it over. If you're not open, don't leave it there. It's simple things like this. This is one of the places that some consultants will say to use the QR codes because they actually give you a way to do a handoff. For instance, if someone is looking for a certain nationality of food, but you're not in business or you're not taking orders or whatever that day, it can direct them to your website. So yeah, QR codes is pretty good. Kind of staying in the marketing category, but circling back to the business plan, because your market analysis or your market plan is, a significant portion of your business plan. Let's talk first, or let me point out first about market analysis. You want to not go into a situation like opening a travel agency right when the trend became using Expedia and online booking by the airlines and all that. It doesn't totally say that you probably wouldn't want to consider opening a travel agency, but you sure wouldn't want to be the traditional style one. It would have to be something pretty unique. So, you don't want to go into saying, well, I'm going to start a business that clearly, that the trends and the world is moving along past, beyond you. That's also a thing, just FYI, to watch out for if you're looking at buying an existing business. Is, often those businesses are on the market because, their time is waning. Let's see, what else on there? A little bit about how to gather data. The first one is, let's take a community where you want to serve breakfasts, for instance. And in that community, just to pick numbers that are easy for me, that there's 500 breakfasts being served by your competitors. You've gone around and counted up pretty well how many people are there. Okay, when you enter that, if you're a new business, the number 500 doesn't go up. If there were 5 restaurants previously, the average is 100 customers per restaurant. And now that you've entered the market, it's 500 divided by 6. You cannot, just invent that the numbers are going to go up. Now, there are ways to start then building on that and say, how are you going to draw other people, or you're going to do deliveries to the local plants or whatever. There are other ways to add to your numbers, but the starting fundamental assumption is if there's 500 breakfasts being served in that community and you're the 6th entry, you're taking everybody's share down a bit. Getting info from other businesses. One of the hardest things it seems like for people to do is actually to go in and watch and observe and count, but that's the way to do it. The more that you can do on-site things about looking at menus, jotting down pros and cons, prices, etc., having friends and family do the same thing, that's another place you can use them. That's really still the best way to get the data. There are research services that are out that you can hire for some things, but the expense is very, very big. So, it's hard to beat the on-site stuff, but you have to do it thoroughly. Traffic counts is another one. There's different ways to get hold of traffic counts. But before I just took a number from a government GIS data file that said how many vehicles are exiting and entering this interchange, I'd probably still want to, if nothing else, have my my kid during the summer go out there and sit out there in a vehicle and do some counts, at least to validate the thing. And personal experience is really important, particularly in the food products and the food preparation business. It's another deal breaker for lenders. If you don't have the experience, it's really tough to get them to convince that you're going to be okay. And then, as I touched on with the travel agents, the trends is something you got to be really careful about. Starting with competition is good because you have to assume that they're open for some reason. So that they provide quite a bit of information. And again, the reason you want to look at them is to avoid errors or weaknesses that they have. those should be turned around into advantages that you're going to promote. And that's the kind of stuff that then it goes into setting your strategy that'll make you different and better. It's pretty simple to come up with some standardized forms that allow you to pretty quickly rate the competition that you're going to face. And this would be the same with shelf goods, products that are packaged for sale in containers. Same thing. I would maybe suggest that there's a few other complexities to that. For instance, the buying channels and who you have to make your sales pitches to and things. But I'd get as far as I could doing some of the grassroots research first, and then decide where to get some professional help as well. And talking about your strategy, I think everyone is familiar with the idea that low price is not always the soundest strategy to have. But if you're going to, have a different price level than one that drives everyone because it's just the best deal in town, you have to have something behind it to warrant that. So that's pretty well what marketing strategy really, I think, aims at the most. You want to make a fair profit. Again, not just the lenders, but the owner deserves it. If you worked hard on an idea, you deserve something in return for that. You took the risk, so you deserve to be compensated. Determining price, there's a number of ways to do that. One of the ones that I've seen quite a bit in small town retail is people will take their cost and double it. That might be okay, it might not be. Now in most food businesses, I would be really nervous about that one. It really probably should be much higher than that. So again, that's when I go back to my third formula. You can also kind of, if you're really experienced, go with what the market's going to bear. Another caveat is start a little bit high. It's easier to come down on your price and go up. What else? Profit margin. You have to pay your bills. I guess that's what it comes down to. You can't run on red ink. And so I think that would be probably the main reality check I would touch on for profit margin. However, there are industry averages, and those can be obtained through advisors and specialists if you're not aware of it already. That's also a place where some of the websites like the a la carte one, once in a while you can get those kind of indicators off of them, or starting to read trade publications. Trade publications and industry associations are pretty good. And when I started this back a ways, an hour and 15 minutes ago, pointed out that anyone with an idea deserves a better chance of success than wishing and hoping. Target market aims at that. It's all well and good to wish that passers-by would come into your business, would shop you on your website, would find you on Etsy, whatever we're talking about. But the more you have a specific idea as to the core customers you're trying to attract, the better off you're going to be. It allows you to be more efficient in your marketing and what you spend money on. And an example of that would be, and I don't know, I've used hair salons and things in quite a few examples through the years. But as a man going into a hair salon to get my hair cut, it's kind of an intimidating experience. There's a lot of smells and noise and things going on that, make me a little nervous. And so I can point to examples of salons that have catered to men. They changed the look. They might change their hours. They change the music. They change what they and their staff are talking about. There's just ways to do that. Another target market that I saw work very well was actually with a barber. And in one community, he was the first one that actually remained open on Mondays. So he was targeting people that were off on Mondays. And he was one of the early ones to give additional discounts to veterans. And of course, you can imagine how he decorated the front of the barber shop and some of the promotion that he did. I saw another salon, sticking with that example, that their main focus on hours of being open was basically mid-afternoon to early evening. And it was because they were on a main thoroughfare with a lot of people coming home from work into the bedroom community. And that was their sweet spot. That's when they wanted to be full. And basically their focus on all their marketing was to catch people. They wanted to catch people before they made it home, with the idea that once you get home and get comfortable, you're not going to come back out again. So they did everything possible to catch people on their commute home and, spend another half an hour or an hour on yourself before you go back to your household responsibilities. The way to look at target markets also, there's several different ways. Demographics is picking people with common interests, and the one about rush hour commuters would be a good example of that. That's a common demographic. They're all, on the highway at the same time. They mostly are working age, they have families and responsibilities at home, etc. If you wanted to target the retirees, that would be different. They probably stay off the road during that time. They have a little more time to spend during the morning. Moving on to geographic, that's the most easy one for everyone to grasp. And basically there in a business plan, if you have a geographic area that you're planning to target, I would basically take a map and indicate with a large circle or several bullseye circles the range of travel distance that you're planning to attract customers from. And then trends would be a little bit different. Trends, of course, are catching things as they emerge and the interest that people have and capitalizing on that. If you can do it and it fits with your idea, that one can be pretty high margin because you're early in on the game. Demographics is a little bit more in the middle because if you're reaching a certain demographic, they're probably willing to spend a little bit more. And geographic often can be the most, then it's either convenience or it's probably you have a pretty good value that's going to draw people in. Although it could be appearance and a few other things. But mostly I think the demographics and the trends are going to be where if you can latch on to things there, the profits are generally going to be a little bit better. Another example that comes to mind I would point to with trends is the dry rubs on meats. Actually, I believe has been growing in strength over the last 5 or 6 years, but it's a pretty new trend. And you see a lot of products out there now that you wouldn't have seen 7 or 8 years ago. You'll see new retailers that are carrying that product. That would be an example of a trend. Fresh, local, those are trends that come up quite a bit and are in the press. And then probably heading a little bit into the secondary tier of marketing info. If you have a target market, it's going to be easier to stay away from this problem of having poor information or confusing information. That's, I think it's very key in websites, marketing pieces, but also then, of course, physical locations and inside locations too, exterior and interior. But the more that you have a clear view of who you want to reach and what you want to say, the easier it is to solve these issues. And then this one really plays to me in small town Main Street kind of things. Businesses are often set up and looked at when they're empty, and you really need to look at them and design them for when it's like you as an owner, you hope it is, it's busy. You know, things are placed too close. There's all kinds of science and books written about you don't want to provide dead ends. People will avoid them. There's sciences about what goes on end caps, what doesn't. If you put things too close and customers are actually forced to come in contact with each other, that's like a real taboo. You know, and so even like picking retail space, you know, that's why you don't want to pick a retail space until you actually have figured out what your plan is, and what your marketing approach is going to be. Excuse me. Using the customer's own momentum, we see, and when you think about it, we all see this. It's why all the little impulse items are when you're waiting in line at the checkouts. Offering service agreements, you know, you get the sales pitch when you're checking it out with $100 or $200 or $500 piece of technology. That's the right time to ask for that service agreement. And then the word adjacency is kind of not a great word, but the concept is very powerful. And there's not a lot of out-of-the-box thinking done on that by many merchandisers. And again, this applies to website businesses as well. But the classic one is a wide assortment of goods in a store and putting wine selection near the anniversary cards. You know, how often have any of us seen that done? It's few and far between, and yet it's very easy to do. The convenience store trade probably is better at adjacencies than almost any other business, because they've learned it, and they have a lot of smart people in their headquarters that determine the planograms and things and how it's all going to flow. And they know exactly what is the low margin, the medium, and the high margin items, and what they're going to try and drive people to purchase that they didn't plan on purchasing when they came in the door. I like the idea of cheese slices being, and of course it's nice because they're shelf stable, but cheese slices being presented by the buns and the bread, as opposed to having to walk all the way across a supersized market now to the dairy area. So, you know, those are good examples. But with websites, what I would probably do there is it would be not just photographic, but it would also be the wording, the copy that would be on the website, steering people to other things. Excuse me, I got to take a drink here. And after everything is all said and done with your marketing plan, and actually then if you're able to implement your idea, through all that, you go through all the work to develop or source the right products. You do a lot of work to get your pricing situated and figure out your formulas. And you know, most times it's you can't have the luxury of just straight lining your price, like I said, where you just take all your costs and you double it. That usually is not a good theory, even though it's used quite a bit. So anyway, you sort out all your pricing philosophies and formulas and how that'll work. You select your place, design your website, figure out your store, your shopping basket, shopping cart, all that. Figure out your target market and audience, how you're going to promote to them, when, what are you going to say, keeping your look and brand organized. And then after that, it all really comes down to service if you want repeat customers. And that is just one of those painful lessons that I think as consumers we all look at and agree with. But in this discussion and presentation, we're flipping it around. And as the owner of a business, it's all about service. After you've gone through the hours and hours and all the ideas that have been outlined. But it's true. Maybe just a short word here about, I've had a number of owners of businesses talk about, well, they don't want to participate on Facebook or whatever because you'll get negative commentary. In my view, and again, this is a personal one, it's such a communicative world, and people can do it so easily that to try and think you can hold that back is, to me, it's impractical. And so I would more encourage embracing it and treating it as, again, not just a learning thing, but a place where you can get helpful information that can help your business be better. But it's also a place where you can track your service and figure out, do people really value what you've done? And hopefully, more often than not, if you've done things well, the people that have had a good experience, they will go to bat for you. And again, this is another place where I've seen the QR codes work, is basically stores have put those right at the checkout, and you can give people an incentive, a coupon on a future purchase or whatever, but basically right then and there while they're at the checkout, you basically say, do you have a smartphone, or I see you're using your phone, could you scan this QR code? It'll take you right to a survey, and then it's got to be a simple one, but basically ask your 1, 2, or 3 questions and collect it right then and there while people are motivated. So that's been another very good use of technology to help get to this service thing that is just so important. Talking about websites and then trade data, which, like I mentioned, trade publications, industry averages, etc. One of the problems that we have with computers is that, and electronic communication, is that it's actually becoming easier to gather the data than to stop and figure out what it means. And an example of that would be if you have a website and or you're doing advertising on Facebook or another social platform, they have analytics right there. And if an owner is going to be doing, or I guess if you have a strong marketing person that you're fortunate enough to be able to delegate that, that should be, a weekly practice, is looking at what your data is, not just as what is your hit rates and your conversion of inquiries to purchases, etc. But you want to be sure that you're hitting the right demographics. Those analytics, they come with your monthly costs, which is either free or fairly small, for having someone host your website, for instance. The money is fairly low, but they're providing these nice tools, and they really need to be used. And that's one of the examples where, too, if as an owner you don't really understand them, or you want some help, or you just don't have enough hours in the day, that's one of those places where you can probably purchase the help and actually have some bright young person, friend or family, somebody that basically can put that into meaningful format for you. This would also be another place to catch the thing about whether or not you've gotten negative comments, or someone's posted something about your activity that you'd really prefer wasn't there. That's the way to pick it up. You don't want that stuff to sit. And actually, I went through that pretty quick, so I got done faster than I actually had anticipated. So if you want, you can either conclude, or if you wanted to open it up to a few questions, I would be glad on that too. I'll defer to the extension folks that are hosting it.
Well, I had a question on the, is he there?
Yeah, hold on, Steve. We have a question here at the Taylorville office.
Okay.
When you discussed the Social Security number or getting your tax-free number, that's not clear to me. In order to buy things wholesale, or to get into a wholesale website, or to purchase things tax-free, where do you get the number that you need, the tax-free number?
Well, if you're just doing basic research, that's where the difficulty comes in, and you might have experienced that. Most firms are not going to accept a Social Security number, and the fields, if it's an online inquiry, it's going to be formatted probably so it won't accept a Social Security number. And so that's when you actually do have to, if you really want those numbers, you're going to have to basically go onto the IRS.gov website and find there where it says to request a taxpayer ID number or an EIN number, whatever. The problem is they call the same number several things. But that's actually where you're going to have to go and apply. And through the applying, they are actually going to, they're treating it as a legitimate request, not that you're just doing market research. And so that's where, while I say to normally try and hold off and not become this entity in the eyes of the government, that's one of the places where if you really want those quotes from a manufacturer, for instance, you may have to actually go ahead and identify your business idea to a degree, and I'll say a little more about that in a minute. But and actually fill out the form on the and the instructions that the IRS gives you, and get that ID number. Okay, what I wanted to finish with is, unfortunately, that ID number is sitting out there live. It's like later on, if you choose to not follow through with your idea, the government is still going to be looking for you to do reporting and stuff based on that number. They don't like them just sitting out there being inactive. To them, that means something's wrong, like you're not reporting. That's why I'm just saying be cautious and make assumptions if you can, but when you can't, then go ahead and fill out, and get your federal ID number, and then you can, get the quotes and the inquiries from the firms that you want to. Just keep in mind that it's a commitment, and you can undo it with the government later, but it's just it's a pain. It's difficult.
It's difficult to undo it if you decide not to.
Yes, absolutely. It'd be like taking away your Social Security number. They're going to wonder where you went.
So if you were going to start a business that would be seasonal and it wouldn't be operational until the Christmas season or in November, but you needed to purchase things now and you are purchasing things now, wouldn't you need to get that number right now? But then how do you let them know that this isn't something that you're really you're not going to be making money at this for many months?
Yeah, it's okay because you are making purchases. You're doing tangible things. It's okay to go ahead and get your ID number. Just keep in mind then, though, that let's say, maybe they'll let it slip until mid-year, but at some point before next Christmas, they're going to start wanting to see quarterly tax filings from you. Basically, though, and again, this is where you need people like a tax preparer involved, is your income is zero, but there might be something set for reporting that you've had expenses, or you just report zero and kind of accumulate your expenses till next year or Christmas when you're going to start applying them directly to the money that's coming in. But a tax preparer and a bookkeeper can help you with that decision. Getting the tax ID number, though, when you're trying to do purchasing now, is certainly that would be a very reasonable example of when you should get it quite a bit in advance.
Okay, thank you.
I think that might be all for questions. I know they've got a lot to digest from all of this, but thank you, Steve, so much for offering to give people follow-up advice or information, I should say. Really appreciate it. I just want to thank you for taking your time. You've obviously got a lot of knowledge in the field and a lot of experience, and so we really appreciate it. I'd also like to take this opportunity to invite everyone to attend our upcoming seminars for specialty food producers. Coming up is the cottage law, as Lisa mentioned earlier, and that's going to be on Monday, February 13th from 1 to 3. Then importance of branding, which is going to follow up on some of the topics that Steve talked about as well. And that's going to be on Monday, March 13th from 1 to 3. And then there's going to be a seminar on agritourism on Monday, April 10th from 1 to 3. And then there will be a seminar on social media, and Terry Miller, am going to be doing that one. It'll be a lot of fun on Monday, May 8th from 1 to 3. There's no cost to attend any of these seminars. However, we do ask that you register in advance, and participants may register online by going to our website. That's web.extension.illinois.edu/CJMM, or you can call the Christian County Extension Office or the Montgomery County Extension Office, and we'd be happy to get you registered.